welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South. A team of 101 Cuban nurses arrived in Barbados on Sunday to assist in the local battle against COVID-19. They were welcomed by the Barbadian Minister of Health, Ambassador David Commission, and the Ambassador of Cuba. Prime Minister Mia Mottley welcomed them from her social media following their 5-hour travel from Havana on 2 specially chartered Liat flights. They were also given a warm welcome by the Cuban-Barbadian Friendship Association. On their first full day in Barbados, the Cuban Nurse Brigade visited the monument to the martyrs, paying respect to the 73 passengers and crew who were killed in the bombing of Cubana Flight 455 of the coast of Pines Bay, Barbados, on October 6, 1976. The crime was carried out by CIA-linked terrorists. 20 ventilators destined for Barbados have been seized by the United States. Health Minister Jeffrey Bostic said the ventilators were donated by a well-wisher to help the country handle COVID-19 cases, but were confiscated by U.S. authorities before they could be exported to the Caribbean nation.
Just want to correct something that I would have said earlier in relation to the ventilators that were presented by Rihanna. In fact, 5 of those ventilators are due in next week. The order that I was referring to actually was not the Rihanna order, but another order for 20 ventilators that a philanthropist had consented to purchase for us. Those ventilators were actually stopped in the United States, the exportation of those 20 ventilators.
Cuba's Director of Epidemiology for the country's Minister of Health has confirmed 30 new cases on the island after 753 tests were carried out, bringing the total number of COVID-19 cases to 350.
Cuba registers 350 confirmed COVID-19 cases. That means 5.8% of the tests that have been taken are positive. The 30 new cases have to do with 29 Cubans and 1 foreigner from Tanzania. Out of the 350 confirmed cases, 309 are stable. 9 people have passed away. 2 have been taken to their home countries, the United States and Canada, respectively. 18 patients that have been discharged. 8 patients are in critical condition and 4 in serious condition.
The number of confirmed cases in St. Kitts and Nevis stands at 10 as the government has called for 14 days of partial restrictions to slow the spread.
Today, St. Kitts and Nevis reports 10 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with 0 deaths. To date, 183 persons have been tested with 10 confirmed positive, 114 confirmed negative, and 59 results pending.
Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Timothy Harris, says he wants the country to be the first to overcome the COVID-19 and that they are well equipped to do so.
While we started with the understanding it was just the extremely old, we are seeing also that very young people are now part of the vulnerable group. In fact, all of us are part of the vulnerable group. So each one of us can do something. Wash our hands regularly and properly. Boost our immune system. Undertake social distancing. Wear the mask as often as you can. These are things that a disciplined people must do. What I would wish is that we do those things that are within our power to do. Stay at home. Stay at home.
On Sunday, Haiti confirmed its first death due to the COVID-19. The victim is among the 21 cases of people infected with COVID-19 in the country. According to the Ministry of Public Health, the victim was a 55-year-old man who had hypertension and diabetes and was taken to a hospital due to his infection. The government has closed the border with the Dominican Republic and suspended some international flights. Dominican Republic's Minister of Health, Rafael Sanchez Cárdenas, is responding to a problem which numerous Latin American and Caribbean governments are facing in trying to buy medical equipment to combat COVID-19.
The limitations we face in buying medical supplies and the country's necessity in doing so forces us to buy medical equipment in prices which are not common. For example, a hand sanitizer that costs 60 pesos now costs much more. So to demand the Dominican Republic to buy a hand sanitizer in that price is an irresponsibility. Everyone knows the limitations imposed by the United States on the purchasing of medical equipment. We have to go to China with special planes, which makes the purchasing of the equipment more expensive. So how can someone demand we buy the face masks and hand sanitizer at the same price as before?
Trinidad and Tobago has extended and intensified stay-at-home measures as the country has recorded its 8th COVID-19 death with 105 positive patients this Monday.
The government takes the position that the stay-at-home will go until April 30th, and we will take additional action to intensify the compliance of that instruction. Not relax it. Intensify the compliance, because that is what is required to deal with the problem that we are dealing with. It is not a question about preserving your comfort zone. It is not a question about preserving your earning capacity. It is not a question about equalizing co-ethnic behavior. It is not a question about accepting and exploiting political opportunity to create mayhem. It is simply a question of whether we live or whether we die.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has said the country is ready to receive more than 15,000 Venezuelans who were returning home due to lockdowns put in place in neighboring countries to fight COVID-19. He said during the weekend more than 1,000 migrants had returned.
We are preparing to receive 15,000 Venezuelans migrants returning from Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. There are videos and photos on social media about their situation. We will receive them all with love and all the preventive measures. They will all be tested immediately. They will take a quick test at the border. There are enough tests and we must check all of them. Those who are positive will be sent directly to the medical centers and hospitals. We have beds ready to receive them and take care of them. Those who are tested negative will go to hotels and other places reserved for the mandatory 14-day quarantine. And after that, we will do one more test. We are taking all the preventive measures in order to block any positive case from entering Venezuela.
Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez on Sunday announced 4 new cases of COVID-19.
We have 159 cases, and 52 of them have recovered. That means a percentage of 33% of the people recover. That's a positive number. When we compare it with other countries, 34 people are in medical center, 31 are isolated at their homes. We insist that people who are infected and are at home to stay home, to use masks inside their homes, to designate one person to their care, and avoid contact with other members of their family. For cases where this cannot be applied, we have special protocols in place, and they can be in quarantine in a public health center.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Saturday, U.S.-based magazine Newsweek revealed that President Donald Trump's move to indict senior Venezuelan officials for alleged drug trafficking is a pretext to divert attention from his mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the magazine, senior Pentagon official confirmed that the operation announced a few days ago, allegedly to fight drug trafficking and to contain the COVID-19 pandemic, was planned a few months ago to put pressure on President Nicolás Maduro. The plan, however, was not supposed to be made public until May, but the White House rushed the announcement in order to distract citizens from the COVID-19 crisis. Amidst the struggle against COVID-19 in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro sent a letter to the people of the U.S. with a message of solidarity and a call for peace. The letter was read out by Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza.
We are not as different as they want to make us look with lies. We are people looking for a more just, free and compassionate society. Let's not allow the particular interests of a minority led by ambition separate us. We, as our leader Hugo Chavez once said, share the same dream. Martin Luther King's dream is also the dream of Venezuela and its revolutionary government.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has once again cautioned the United States to abide by international law as the country has deployed warships and troops near Venezuela and amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Rowley was speaking in a one-on-one interview with CECN TV6.
I'm sure that at the end of the day, common sense and good sense would prevail in Washington. Unfortunately, the maneuvers are taking place in our neighborhood. And we in Trinidad and Tobago, our position has been made very clear at the United Nations last September. And it may have been missed by many persons because you might ask, what do we want? What do we expect? What we want is international business being conducted and a rules-based formula. That there are rules that all the countries of the world in the United Nations, we have agreed to abide by those rules. And once we respect the rules-based formulae, everything's going to be all right.
Meanwhile, Dr. Keith Rowley has expressed disappointment over the political standoff taking place in Guyana, a month after the country went to the polls on March 2nd.
I am very disappointed and also very concerned about the situation in Guyana. When I went on that trip with the CARICOM team, I was kind of hopeful that our presence would have brought to bear on our brothers and sisters in Guyana, and out of it might have come some position that could have led to a result. I'm worried that an election of a month ago is a courthouse matter. I'm getting a feeling that this is not going to end well. I hope I'm wrong, but that feeling that the election in the court after a month after election day, I'm not having a good feeling about it.
The Guyana Elections Commission, or GECOM, has agreed to a national recount of votes cast in the March 2nd general elections. GECOM spokeswoman Yolanda Wardy says that the process will be done in chronological order from regions 1 to 10. This comes after the full court on March 31st threw out an injunction by the Partnership for National Unity and Alliance for Change party against a recount in Region 4. Authorities have faced criticism over the credibility of the tabulation and declaration of results, as both the APNU plus AFC and the People's Progressive Party Civic declare themselves the winner. More than 9,300 COVID-19 cases have been confirmed in Africa as countries continue to heighten prevention and control measures against the spread of the virus in the region. South Africa is among the most affected countries, with COVID-19 cases almost reaching 1,700 and at least 11 people reported dead. The second most affected is Algeria with 1,320 positives, followed by Egypt and Morocco with 1,173 and 1,021 confirmed cases respectively. Residents from an Ivory Coast town, Abidjan, have protested against the government's decision to build a coronavirus health center within their neighborhood. Residents said they fear the location of the COVID-19 center could expose them and higher risk of contacting the virus. Police fired tear gas to disperse the protesters, and government officials later came to engage locals on the need for the facility. Ivory Coast has 261 confirmed cases and 3 people have already died from the virus.
If they are releasing funding, they should build their centers outside the town. I just don't get it. We are humans too. The whole world is fighting against the virus, and yet it's here, in the middle of the city, that they come and install their center.
South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, has hailed the government and people of Cuba for the assistance they are rendering in the fight against the coronavirus across the world. The party said the international solidarity that Havana has shown in the face of the pandemic has shamed those who continuously try to isolate and economically destroy the country. The ANC has also called on the U.S. government to lift all unilateral coercive measures against Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, and Palestine in order to enable the governments of these nations to protect their people from the coronavirus. A study by the African Union has revealed that more than 20 million people on the continent are at risk of losing their livelihoods due to the impact of the coronavirus. The study, called Impact of the Coronavirus on the African Economy, said the continent's economy will shrink by more than 1% this year due to the pandemic, while governments could lose about 30% of their revenue. The continent's oil-dependent countries will be the worst affected, with Nigeria and Angola expected to lose more than $65 billion in income.
The patient is a 20-year-old female who arrived in the country from Netherlands via Addis Ababa on the 28th February 2020. She has no history of underlying or pre-existing illness. She is currently in isolation.
And still in Africa, 20 soldiers have been killed in a militant attack in Mali. The insurgents struck a military base in the northern town of Bamba. Government officials have said investigators are ongoing and that the death toll might rise as some of the security forces have been injured. The attack is suspected to have been carried out by a jihadist group. More stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Argentina's economy minister has announced the government's decision to defer payments of up to $9.8 billion on its local public debt amid the coronavirus crisis. The decree published on Monday postpones payments on public debt issued under local law and not subject to international arbitration as the government of President Alberto Fernandez negotiates with creditors to restructure $68.8 billion in private foreign debt. The country's economy minister Martin Guzman announced this plan will set conditions to develop Argentina with social inclusion once we leave behind these extremely difficult circumstances caused by COVID-19. The United States continues battling the COVID-19 while other European countries have reported a decrease in new infections. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has warned that the state's healthcare system is overwhelmed and was running short on supplies. Almost 340,000 cases have been confirmed in the U.S., with New York being the most affected with above 123,000 confirmed cases. Meanwhile, stocks markets have started to show signs of improvement following an announcement that COVID-19 cases are decreasing in many countries. U.S. stocks rose by more than 3% in the first few minutes of trading, following similar gains in Europe and Asia. People in London have continued gathering in public spaces despite the government's lockdown imposed to control COVID-19. Scores of people were seen in Clapham Common Park as people urged them to leave. The UK has reported about 48,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19, with almost 5,000 reported dead. On Sunday, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was admitted to a hospital. It had been 10 days after he tested positive for COVID-19. A statement by his office said the admission was a precautionary move that had been taken on the advice of his doctor. Johnson, who is 55, has been quarantined in his Downing Street residence since being diagnosed on March 26th. Our correspondent Pablo Navarrete spoke with international analyst Carlos Martinez about the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
What we're seeing from the British government, much like what we're seeing from the US government, is really a classic case of too little, too late. It's not like we didn't have any notice, any warning. China introduced a very strict lockdown across the country from the 23rd of January. They didn't just take action in Wuhan, they took precautionary measures throughout the country, specifically to avoid a major outbreak. For every case, isolation, treatment, contact tracing, mass testing, social distancing, wearing masks, all sorts of measures to ensure that people didn't lose their livelihoods. And much the same approach was taken in Vietnam, and in both cases, the results have been very good. So we know for a fact that the virus can be contained. But the British government had basically nothing to say about the coronavirus until the second week of March, by which time there'd already been several hundred confirmed cases and probably tens of thousands of unconfirmed cases. When they did finally comment on it, they proposed this so-called herd immunity, which basically means letting most of the population get the virus. In Boris Johnson's words, you take it on the chin, basically meaning that hundreds of thousands of older people and people with weaker immune systems will die. In other words, it's an exercise in mass social Darwinism in order to protect the economy. And they're still following that to some degree. There's a lockdown, but millions of people still have to go to work because the guidelines are to still go to work if you can't work from home. So for millions of people, that means having to make a choice between spreading the virus or not being able to pay your bills and put food on the table. It's really important that we don't blame people who have to make those impossible choices. The government needs to close all non-essential workplaces, compensate the workers, get mass testing in place, and ensure that health workers have everything they need to do their work safely. It's an absolute travesty that this hasn't happened already, but it absolutely must happen now.
Spain is continuing to register COVID-19 fatalities and new infections despite the announcement by authorities that the virus is slowing down. The health ministry has reported that at least 637 more people have died in the last 24 hours from the novel coronavirus, bringing the total number to 13,055. The ministry also reported 19,400 health workers being infected. In China, Wuhan authorities are preparing to lift most of the city's restrictions as COVID-19 cases continue to decline. Wuhan was the epicenter of the now global pandemic, having confirmed the first case. The city has since been under strict lockdown measures for more than 2 months, during which only essential workers and those with special permission were allowed to move around. Wuhan accounts for about 60% of China's total infections, which stands at more than 81,000. People will be allowed to leave the city on April 8th.
It will definitely change things. Vehicles will be able to flow again when it happens. Right now, vehicles are basically stuck in neighborhoods. After the restrictions are lifted on April 8th, vehicles will be able to go in and out. People who need to come back to Wuhan will choose to return. But for some others, they really have some psychological pressure and don't want to go to Wuhan for the time being. There's this kind of situation.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And be sure to follow us on social media as well. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.